Next up, I'm going to show you how to accentuate the curves and contours of someone's face and body using the dodge and burn tools. But before I do that, I'll point out a couple of things that I've done already. Number one, I've dumped all my retouching into a new group here called Retouching, and that's just to tidy up my layers a little bit so I can see what I'm doing and give me a bit more space. Next, I've done a whole bunch of color correction, and that's sitting in this folder right here. So I've used all the techniques that I've shown you so far throughout the color correction section of these tutorials, and I'll switch them all off and quickly go through them one by one to show you what I've done. First of all, I've color corrected the skin, so I've switched that layer on, and if I option click on the mask, you can see that I've left out the bikini, or I've affected the whole image but painted out the bikini, because those colors that I applied to the skin were altering the color of the bikini, and I didn't really want that to occur. So before and after, and she's definitely looking a lot warmer and her skin's glowing a bit more. Next, there are some areas of the skin here where the ink was a little bit heavy, mainly on the chest area and a few other little spots here and there. If I zoom in on the top of the torso here, the areas that concerned me the most were these sort of dark areas on the chest and some sections of the arm. So if I switch this layer on, what I've done is, in my RGB channels here, I've actually pulled colour out of all three colours, just to lighten the ink load there. Now if I zoom in on the hand area here, now what normally happens is that blood tends to pool in the feet and the hands, and as a result, hands can quite often look a little reddish and blue. So I've colour corrected the hand, so I'll switch this layer on, so the hand more closely resembles the rest of the body. But there are these areas in the fingertips which are very red heavy. So what I've done is I've used my red reduction technique to pull some of that red out of the fingertips. And I'll switch that on. There you are, so the red's disappeared from the fingertips. And if we also quickly go to the toes, I'll zoom in on the toes there. I've done the same here, before and after. Next we'll jump over to the eyes. And first of all, I've whitened the eyes, and I've changed the eye colour to a sort of a richer blue colour. Next, I've used a little bit of brightness and contrast just to brighten those eyes a little bit. Next, I've altered the colours of the lips a little bit, just so they're a little richer, a little more pink. And finally, if I just pan out a little bit, Command minus, there were some areas which to my eye just had a little too much yellow in them. And so I've just taken a little bit of yellow out of those areas. I'll switch this layer on, and the effect is very subtle, before and after. And if I option click on the mask, you can see that I've just painted a little bit on the chest and on the arms as well. So Command 0 to fit to window. Now, as with adding noise to an image, the same goes for dodging and burning. If you can get away with affecting anything onto a separate layer so it's not affecting the original, then that's always a good idea. So our first step for this is to bring up our new layer options, Command Shift N, and I'm just going to call this Dodge Burn. Under Mode, we scroll down to Overlay, and then we tick this box here to fill this layer with grey, and click OK. Now I'm going to zoom in on the face, Command Spacebar, click and drag, a little bit closer to about there, and we're going to get onto our Dodge and Burn tools. So O to get onto our Burn tool there. Obviously, to cycle through those tools, you just hold down the Shift key and keep hitting O, and you can cycle through those tools. But we're after the Burn tool, which is that little symbol that looks like a hand. And up here under Range, I'm going to go to Midtones. And under Exposure, we want a very low exposure. So I'm thinking about 10%. So I'll hit the 1 key to get 10%. Now on Rebecca's face, there's not really that much that needs to be done, but all I think I'm going to do here is just accentuate the cheekbones a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to reduce my brush size a little bit with the left bracket key, and just run this brush with the Burn tool just underneath the cheekbones here a couple of times, just to accentuate those cheekbones a little bit. Just like that. A quick before and after, before and after. Now I'm just going to pan out and just work on some other areas of the body. Now I can go ahead and just accentuate the shadows on the rest of the body. So I'll just run the brush over the inside of the hip here, just to bring up that shadow a little bit more. The shadow on the inside of the arm here. And you can see that I'm just doing very light strokes, just to gently accentuate. You don't want to go overboard. I'm going to run it over this dark patch over the arm here to accentuate these areas. Maybe the inside of the neck. The other side of Rebecca's right arm, and maybe the other side of the hip here. before and after. And so far the effect is very subtle, but what's going to happen is when we dodge onto the highlights and accentuate those a little bit, then the effect's going to be quite a bit more dynamic. So I'm going to scroll down to the legs and just accentuate the shadows and dark areas on this part of the leg. Before and after. Well, that's looking pretty good so far. Command 0 to fit to window. And now we're going to accentuate the highlights a little bit. Once again, I'm going to zoom in on Rebecca's face. Shift-O a couple of times to get onto my dodge tool. Again on midtones. And once again, a very low exposure of, I'd say 10%. Increase my brush a tad with the right bracket key. And now I'm just going to run over those highlights a little bit, just to accentuate them. Command minus to pan out, and I'll brush over the center of Rebecca's left arm, up the top here, on the inside, in the middle of her right arm and forearm, a little bit on the shoulder, maybe just a little bit on the highlights to highlight the cleavage a little bit, and on the inside of the hip. The muscles of the tummy, scrolling down to the legs, and the center of the thigh here. We'll just bump that up a little bit. Command 0 to fit to window, and a quick before and after. Before and after. If I option click on the eye icon of the dodge burn layer, you can see that we've just been working on that one layer. However, we've managed to just accentuate those contours and shadows on Rebecca's body and just bring them out a bit more.